Hey, welcome everyone to Enertiv's office hours. Today we're going to talk about the power of asset tagging with myself, Comley Wilson, and we got Felix Lipov here from our team as well. We're going to give folks one more minute to pile in. Just so you know, there is a chat bar on your right side. Feel free to chat live, and we'll kind of answer questions and respond to comments as we go through it. So we want to make this as interactive as possible and make it an enjoyable time. Feel free to just say hi too if you want. All right. We'll give people another 20 seconds, and then we'll get started here. All right. Well, let's kick it off. So, my name is Comley Wilson. I've been with Enertiv for 5 years, not nearly as long as Felix Lipov has been. There is a lot of topics on our minds constantly. Too much to talk about in any kind of 30-minute, 45-minute session. So we're going to break things down and focus one thing at a time during these kind of office hour sessions. And so this one is the power of asset tagging. This is kind of an overlooked aspect of building operations, of setting yourself up for success when it comes to technology. So let's begin here. This is a picture that I actually took. It's in the mechanical room of a downtown office Class A high rise. It's in the mechanical room. The operations for this building are run by sophisticated kind of union engineers, and yet when it comes to tracking the specifications and important information about this chiller, which probably costs anywhere between $300,000 and $500,000, that information is being recorded on a piece of loose leaf it's not even taped to the equipment. It's kind of just floating around. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to access this information if you weren't directly in front of the chiller, or if this piece of paper had kind of blown away. So, it's surprising to see this in kind of a sophisticated Class A high rise, but that's not the only scenario where this type of information is being kind of stored in a inaccessible way. When we see multifamily portfolios, they're not only tracking, they're generally not tracking kind of large centralized chillers. They're tracking, hundreds, or across a portfolio, many, many thousands of kind of individual assets, things like refrigerators, washer dryers, individual AC units. It's kind of the same process, though. It's paper based, and maybe that makes it into a spreadsheet. We'll talk about kind of the process in a second. So that's on the multifamily side. On the industrial side, or other triple net leased assets, this process is sometimes even worse because landlords correctly feel like, well, the tenants are responsible for maintaining the assets. Why do we have to kind of track these things? So again, it's if it's done at all, this asset tracking capability is often very manual, very paper-based, inaccessible. And so let's talk about how kind of the status quo process happens usually. So first, someone will go to the property and record what's there with pen and paper. They're going around, they're writing down kind of what they see, what they can find, Perhaps they're writing down the condition, although that's not necessarily guaranteed. From there, they'll take all this kind of pen and paper information and do data entry. They'll put that information directly into a spreadsheet, which is better. At least it's a digitized form, but it's still pretty siloed. Having this information in spreadsheets doesn't necessarily lend itself to helping asset managers at the portfolio level or really helping decision making kind of at any point in the organization. And then, that spreadsheet's taken and it's put into some shared drive, probably specific to the property, where it's kind of forgotten about until it's needed someday down the line. So this is kind of the status quo process, and what we get here are ultimately suboptimal outcomes. Because there's so little transparency, assets are generally run until failure. There's if you don't know what the condition of your assets are, if you can't see when they're likely to fail or when you're likely to need to replace them, they're going to be run until failure. When that happens, they're going to be attempted to be repaired, but ultimately it's going to cost more, either when it comes to that, either whether the repair is successful or whether we have to do a replacement. So this is another picture I took. This is outside my apartment building in New York City. We had a replacement kind of temporary chiller outside our building for months. I kind of talked to the engineers there, and they said that it was costing about 3 or 4 times as much per day to run this kind of temporary remote and mobile chiller than it did the original system. This is exactly the types of suboptimal outcomes that one can expect when there's very little transparency into kind of the condition of the assets. But this has been the case for a long time, right? There's nothing about this that is new, right? Commercial real estate has a lot of portfolios have been very, very successful despite running this way. So why now? Why are we talking about this as an issue today when it's kind of been the status quo for many, many years? Well, on one hand, in a lot of portfolios, experienced operators are retiring at an alarming rate. So, an operator with 20 years of experience in the same building, he might not need any technology or asset tagging to kind of help him run his building or her building. The problem is they have gathered a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge, and when they retire, that knowledge is all gone. And the people who are replacing them in general are less experienced, and probably just as importantly, they're much more likely to change jobs. So there's going to be higher turnover pretty much indefinitely as we go forward. So these new people, not only are they looking for jobs that have kind of a digital backbone for them to access because they're younger, because they've grown up in this environment, but they also need to get up to speed much more quickly. You can't depend on them to stick around for 20 years like we used to. Plus, one issue that's kind of been part of the status quo that's getting more attention these days because there are concerns about the effects on the bottom line is vendor accountability. How do you know? In fact, many asset managers, many operators know that their maintenance vendors are in fact not doing the work that they're contracted for. They just don't have the transparency to kind of call their bluff, and they don't There's no level of accountability to ensure that they're actually doing the work that they're prescribed. So they're cutting the same corners. They're waiting until things fail so they can upcharge on repairs. All these things are kind of lending themselves to higher operating expenses in a time where that's kind of no longer acceptable. Okay, so we've kind of set the stage. We've talked about, what the status quo is, what some of the problems associated with that are. So let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about, what are the elements of modern asset tracking? How are sophisticated portfolios addressing this issue by leveraging technology? So the very first step is modern asset tracking is digital. It's inherently digital. There's no getting around it. There's no robot that's going to do these kind of on-site surveys and condition assessments for you. But as a human walks around, there's no reason why they should be entering information onto pen and paper and then transmitting that into spreadsheets. It's totally possible to create a digital inventory on the fly as you're doing your work. The cool thing is there's a lot of technology actually that can digitize nameplates like this picture on the back end. So, for those of you out there who have never seen a nameplate or don't understand the value here, the nameplate has all the specifications of equipment. So if you need to order replacements or if you're trying to purchase an in-kind system or you're considering an upgrade, all this information is really, really valuable. But usually operators have to physically go up to the equipment to kind of pull up this information. Why not digitize it, make it accessible from anywhere? And then you kind of have a history of conditions. So the problem with spreadsheets is that you usually get snapshots in time, and there's no easy way to see, like, this pump has actually gotten has been flagged over and over again by our condition assessments. It's all I'm seeing is the most recent one where we should be looking at kind of a history of condition. That gives a lot of transparency. The other thing that technology is good at is extendability. And that's kind of it's not a super clear term, but all that means is that the information and use case for asset tracking and asset tagging can be useful in other places. So let's see like how it can be extended. First thing is software is much better than spreadsheets at linking relevant information. So a great example is, say you have a capital plan and you decide that you have an evaluation, a third party comes in and they say, well, this boiler can last 3 more years. Defer the replacement of this boiler by 3 years. And the asset manager says, great, I would rather spend the money later than spend it now. Well, 3 years later comes along and the asset manager says in a budgeting meeting, why did we make this decision 3 years ago? And the operator says, well, I'm sure we had a good reason at the time, but I can't remember. A lot has happened in the last 3 years, and I'll have to dig up that evaluation wherever that document lives. So by extendability, these equipment inventories, they don't have to just be kind of what you see, right? They can link relevant information very, very easily. So that evaluation in that budgeting meeting could be pulled up kind of on the fly. Another great example is training and troubleshooting videos. So, we talked about before how there are going to be, most portfolios are going to be run by less experienced operators who are more likely to leave. Well, we need to arm them with better tools to do their job. And one of those things is training and troubleshooting videos. So wouldn't it be great if you could be in front of a piece of equipment and pull up that equipment's troubleshooting or training video kind of on the fly? That's another example of extendability. And then there's connecting it to all the other software that the operations and property management team is using, whether that's around maintenance or their energy or their capital planning. All these things, they shouldn't live in silos. They should be connected, and that's kind of part of the modern asset tracking and asset tagging feature set. The other big thing is that it's accessible. So when I said that this operator in the field could pull up the troubleshooting video, I really mean it. They shouldn't have to go to a desktop or log into any sort of software to take advantage of the asset tracking and the asset tagging. Asset tags are basically QR code stickers. They go directly on the piece of equipment. So if you're in the field, you have instant access to all this information that usually lives kind of in some binder somewhere, maybe a spreadsheet. It reduces the amount, significantly reduces the amount of time spent looking for information and increases the time spent kind of performing action. And of course, say you're on the other side of say you're on vacation in Florida and you get a call. If you're not in front of the piece of equipment, you should be able to log into a platform and not have to go to the shared drive for that particular property, pull up the spreadsheet, kind of be looking at some information Excel rather than actual pictures of that equipment, along with its nameplate information, along with those O&M files and their warranties and the service agreements, along with those troubleshooting videos. That's what modern kind of asset tracking looks like. The other big thing is that asset tagging sets the stage for future technology adoption. So a lot of portfolios today are looking to technology to improve outcomes, whether that's reducing operating expenses or helping their on-site teams do more with less, or giving their asset managers transparency into what's happening in the portfolio. The problem is that if you're starting from kind of ground zero, it's kind of difficult to skip all the way to the end. You need kind of a phased approach, and asset tagging is usually a great first step. So let's talk about capital planning, for example. What goes into capital planning? Usually it's a property condition assessment taken at least, at most 5 years ago. We'll take a snapshot in time. We'll take the kind of the conditions of equipment. We'll estimate when it's going to be replaced. We'll put that into spreadsheets, and there's our capital plan. Well, with asset tagging and asset tracking, this, as we said in the beginning, these inventories are not only created on the fly, they're updated continuously. And because it's flowing into software, we can do really cool things like say, it turns out across the portfolio, we're buying 25 boilers this year. Why is each property buying one at retail? We should be buying 25 at bulk. So that's kind of one example of how asset tracking sets the stage. The other one is real-time monitoring at scale. So if you're in charge of a large portfolio, you might want to say, hey, I want all the building management systems to have kind of an analytics overlay that's kind of optimizing how they're running. And I want all the equipment that's not on the BMS or in buildings that we don't have a BMS, I want those to be monitored too. And I want my teams to be getting real-time and predictive alerts. I want them to be getting, energy efficiency recommendations and insights. I want all the benefits that come from real-time monitoring. Well, technology companies are going to say, great. First step, we need to understand what's in there, right? We need to understand what's in your buildings, how they're related to each other, where they are, how they're fed from an electrical and a mechanical and a plumbing perspective. And that information gathering process takes a lot of time and frankly can kill the momentum, kill the excitement early on when the value of real-time monitoring is discovered. But with kind of modern asset tracking set in the stage, you can just hand over this information to real-time monitoring companies and say, hey, we have our full equipment inventory, meter inventory, we have all the appliances, we have all that kind of tracked, tagged, and in software. So, here's your export, where everything is, what it is, and now we'll look forward to a proposal. And we can do that very, very quickly, and we can do that across any number of buildings rather than doing these deep dives into kind of one building at a time. So I ran through that nice and quickly. These slides and the recording will be sent out tonight to everybody who registered. Felix, any thoughts on asset tagging?
No, I think it's great. So, the key thing, like you mentioned, is being able to easily flow through the data and find things that are scattered all over the organization, having one place to grab it all.
Yeah,
so,
and Felix is the expert on the extendability piece. So when he's coming at this from a software perspective. So, when he sees that, we have equipment here for maintenance, and we have equipment here for the capital plan, and we have equipment here for monitoring. Those all tie together, and they should. And they, he's. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how you think about things from kind of an extendability and a software perspective.
Right, because anyone who's worked with spreadsheets will realize that trying to cross-reference things across multiple different data sets is really hard. And once things start getting organized, and if not organized in a consistent fashion, being able to refer to RTU1 here, or my HVAC systems there, or my rooftop equipment in another place, well, if that's not organized as some sort of methodical ontology, a fancy term for it, it's really hard to then make sense of, okay, wait, what maintenance have I done on this equipment? When is it up for replacement or repair? What's the nameplate information? What model? What make? What do I actually even have? So being able to go from the bottom up and say, this is all the equipment I have. These are all the information that goes with it. These are all the documentation, the pictures, planning, maintenance, PM, etc. associated, and having something as simple as a QR so I can walk up and have tap into that information very easily and quickly, that's huge. But to do that, you need to build this up from the ground up. And we've been focusing on trying to make this all accessible. So no matter where you are, you can tap into relevant information quickly and easily so that you can make educated decisions about how to manage your building.
Well said. Well said. And any questions from the audience? We're happy to answer those now. If not, we'll cut it off and we'll give you some time back. And either way, we'll send out the recording, like I said. And if you have any questions in the future, we are always available to help. All right. Thanks for your time, everyone, and have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Norman.